days, Lord.
Yep. Get our seats, we'll get started. Call the steering committee meeting to order. Looks like we have everyone here. Appreciate you coming out tonight. First item of business would be to review our minutes from the August 3rd meeting. Any corrections, additions, deletions to those? Mr. Ford? Any other?
Move to add Mr. Ford's name and approve the minutes as read with his name added.
Have a motion by Mr. Harsh and a second by Mr. Clarity to approve the minutes with that one addition or correction. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are done. Okay, Mayor, looks like most of this, I think you're going to have to take the lead on, so just jump right on into it.
Well, I'll start with the mayor's report thing. Craig Moreland, who's the water board chairman, resigned. I believe the date was August 31st. So I hope to have a nomination to fill his place on the water board by the county commission meeting this month. Go right into item 4A, the playground additional funding for ground covering. This is the safety surface that the Tennessee Department of Environment Conservation has requested that's outside the project area we're going for the LPRF grant. That was the one. It was the engineered wood fiber that TDEC and the engineering firm and I discussed. There were some questions or concerns or wanting to get prices on rubber. I have passed it on to engineering firm and I have not got any written estimates back on that yet. And I've been trying to contact TDEC and haven't been able to speak with them directly as of yet.
Will that need to go into Parks and Rec or just straight to budget and finance, you think?
If it goes to Parks and Rec, if you're wanting to do it this month, you're going to Parks and Rec. That doesn't meet till after budget and finance.
Mr. Gregory, do you have a Parks and Rec meeting scheduled?
Yeah, it's after.
It's after our meeting? Yeah. Okay. What y'all thinking? Well, the mayor's requested that we take a look at this. I think we need to take a look at it. One of the committees, Mr. Gregory, you are chairman of Parks and Rec. Do you think your committee wants to take a look at it, needs to take a look at it? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, because we remember to use the microphones, people online can't hear you if we don't activate the microphone.
I'm sorry.
So is the, what you're asking on Trey Park Playground, additional funding for ground covering, that piece is, I think as I look at it in here, you've separated that from the LPF or LPRF grant. Is that correct?
We did, and maybe that was some of the confusion last time, that the grant and this project are actually two different things. When the TDEC came to look at Trey Park, they saw the safety surfacing and asked us to put more money in to do some kind of additional safety surfacing throughout the park. So that is not part of the grant. It is a safety requirement the state's asking us to do, because when they come in and inspect the park after we complete our LPRF project, they are going to inspect the entirety of Trey Park, not just the project area. And if it doesn't pass safety standards, well, we may have to be giving them their money back. So that's when we met with the engineering firm, and they looked at it and recommended the engineered wood fiber. TDEC was willing to go along with that, but you've asked to look at the rubber, and I've asked the engineering firm to give me some estimates on that, and as of yet, I haven't received it.
I think I actually sent you an email asking for quotes on whether there'd be options of different pieces there. I think there's some other options. I think you and I talked an email that night.
You did. You sent sand and pea gravel. Engineers said they would strongly suggest either doing the wood fiber or the rubber mulch. They would not suggest doing the pea gravel or sand. Even though like all the Corps of Engineers are in sand? Well, we're not dealing with the Corps of Engineers. We're dealing with the Tennessee Department of Environment Conservation. But as I said, I passed it on to them. They strongly recommended not doing sand or pea gravel. They recommended either looking at the engineered wood fiber or the rubber mulch that was brought up in the last meeting. That's the two routes they strongly suggest you look at. And they haven't gotten me back the prices on those yet.
Mr. Ford.
What's the possibility of just getting enough of the rubber fiber to go in the critical areas?
Well,
I don't think they intended to cover the whole park anyway, did they?
No, and that's, as we went into it, what we would do is put some kind of barrier, whether it's plastic or wood, some kind of barrier around those, because you can, once you do that, your fiber, whatever it's going to be, wood or mulch, is not going to wash away, and you don't have to put it out the entire park, but you will have to put it around a certain amount of area to meet your fallout zones and all this. This additional ground covering has not been engineered or anything because it was not part of the LPRF grant. This is something in addition they've asked us to look at. So there is no engineering or measurements or anything on that right now. Right now, they're just kind of shooting from the hip to give some estimates based on some measurements they've got. So this project, it's going to be hopefully overfunded by the time you get done putting in those barriers and everything. You're going to cover a lot smaller area than what we have initially estimated because nobody's come out and looked exactly to see where those are going to go and haven't measured it off yet.
What would it cost to go with the rubber fiber just in the critical areas? Any idea?
I don't have a, that's one of the questions I've asked them. They were going to give me an estimate on how much it would be for the fill material to meet the requirements, how much it would be shipping, installation, all that stuff. And they said they would submit that to me in writing, and I haven't received it yet.
Mr. Ford, I did some checking on this myself. Spent quite a bit of time looking through some pieces. I've got a couple of different things I'm going to bring out here in the near future and bring to you. Somewhere in the neighborhood at 23,000 square feet of coverage is what that entire park will have left after the area that is being changed at this point to, with this grant that we're already looking at, to do the whole, as you would say. That whole, I've got two different estimates on it, somewhere in the neighborhood of about $75,000. That's 6 inches deep at rubber mulch. Now we can do it, that's delivered to this place right here. The material itself actually only costs about $48,000. So there's a whole lot of shipping, and I don't think tax will be included. That one has tax on it. I wasn't sure about that. Us being a county, I don't know if we pay tax on that or not. I wasn't 100% sure in that one. Taxes on that were close to $10,000. Wasn't sure on that, but that gives you an idea. 23,000. Now I did do some others. You can go on Google Earth, and Google Earth has a measuring tool. So I've got quite a few pieces that I've measured off, print offs. They're a Google Doc. I'll share them out. I just didn't get them out yet. I'm sorry. And where I did actually cut out I went down to the park and got my ideas on where they are. You know, there's the back section where you got some swings and some areas of that nature. And then you got that main playground area, which is where my understanding is you've got to have a certain amount of fall radius. When I say fall radius and of depth there, I think they measure it like 17 feet. 6 inches deep covers a fall at 17 feet is what it's supposed to cover. A kid falling from 17 foot of height. That's what 6 inch deep covers. In that area there. In that area. And those borders that you talk about, they make an 8-inch and a 12-inch border, tall wise. They're $26.40 per 4 foot. It's actually 4 foot 4 inches. It's got a little overlap of 4 inches. That gives that per every 4 foot 4 inches. That's what that covers. You're talking the whole perimeter of the park, somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 feet. I'd say yes, very close. Unless we come up with somebody that might want to help us out with haul bill on that part. Their haul bill on it was about $20,000. That's coming from Indiana. It's coming from, I can go look it up.
Mr. Joe, the price, you going?
I think he's figuring something.
Oh, well.
Are you through? I mean, I don't even want to recognize someone else if you were going to. No, I wasn't sure if you were doing it for everyone or just doing it for your own.
The prices I've looked on that rubber ranges anywhere from $300 to $400 a ton in that price range.
Mr. Ferguson, I believe you were.
I think there's some things we need to be aware of here. We are talking about different options that we think are available to us, and the rubber component seems to be something I'm pretty interested in. But I'd also like to know from the engineering firm, and then not just the engineering firm, but then from TDEC themselves, as to what options we might have before us as to how we implement this. Is there an option A where you do quite a bit? Is there a minimum standard for this? And so before we take this on to budget and finance, we don't know what we're going to do, and we don't know how much that each possibility would cost. And I think we need to know the answers to some of that, and not only just the engineering firm saying, here are your options, but then evidently TDEC has some type of an approval process in whatever we do. It sounds like it, because, you know, this is kind of morphed from just becoming a grant where we get half of the money to now it looks like if we did the project as we saw it before us at 196, I mean, we're up for about 75%, which that still may be the case at the end of the day. But as from what I've been hearing in the discussions, some of the commissioners are wanting to do something that has a little bit more longevity to it than what they've experienced in the past. And so it's really good that Mr. Gully has gone out and come up with some possible ideas of materials and the scope of a project. I'm just curious to see what our options are in terms of maybe a total redo versus partialities versus here's step one that you can do this year, and then step two might be later. You know, what are our minimums versus what is the most we could do, and what would that cost? So I don't know that this really needs to go to budget and finance till we know the answer to those questions.
Mr. Gully.
No, all I was going to state was, you know, at this point, a minute ago, I think we brought up the same piece here. We can take care of this grant right now, that part that can go to budget and finance, and that part here. I think there's some questions that we still need to look at it going forward, because there's multiple ways we could look at that park and breaking that park up. However, we are looking at a cost that's, you know, if we're within $25,000 pretty much of where we were already talking about with wood fiber smokes, and this is a 20-year product. That's what it was guaranteed for, was 20 years. We're looking at a product that's going to take care of us for a long period of time. Yeah, maybe we get more grants and things fixed in the future, but this takes care of that park on that side for quite a while. And I think I like what you said there in this case very well, of let's take a little time to figure out what can we do as Mr. Ford even said, do we have to do the entire area? The one phone call I made to one of the individuals that I was given, if you remember about 2 years ago, we got started talking about this, and the Parker Foundation came to Parks and Rec meeting, and that's where I got on one piece. So I called and said, hey, Mr. Parker, got in touch with Mr. John Parker, and got in touch with Miss Sissy. She gave me Mr. John, and he sent me to a name that was out of Louisiana. The company is called Jelly Bean Mulch. They use rubber flooring. It's a two-man company, just to be straight up and honest with you. Guy was as honest and straight up as can be. When I told him 22,000 square feet, he said, are you sure? So we're talking about a very large area, and he wasn't used to that. It was exactly where he was. They do quite a bit of playground area and quite a bit of those pieces. He wasn't ready for that piece. He said they could do it. Now, don't get me wrong. That was one of the other estimates I had. That estimate came in at about $110,000. They don't use anything that's been recycled. It's all flooring that was just left over from making flooring. Just chipped up flooring.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
To add to what he's talking about, if we end up with a plan that's in phases, and we can tackle part of this phase this year, the LPRF grants are grants that are awarded every other year. So you skip a year, okay? I don't know that we'd have time to skip a year before we went into phase 2. I don't know the answer to that, but I know how often you can apply for those because I have worked with a company before that worked extensively with the state on these LPRF grants. And I know they're every other year. So, you know, you could apply for one and be granted money. And then 2 years down the road, you say, hey, here's step 2. Can you help us again? And you might get it. There's no guarantee you'd get it. But if you're already working with them, you might get step 2. I don't know the answer to that, but it's something to look at.
Mayor, was part of the LPRF grant that we were awarded, does it not include a solid surfacing on that area where this ADA equipment's going to be located? So the part, there'll be several thousand, I would think, square feet that we could subtract from the 22,000. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, there's an area that's going to be, the way they pour it, it's going to be, I think, 3 inches of concrete plus some foam and then a pad, and then AstroTurf is going to be on top of that. One of the reasons you do that is because the we-go-round that's in there actually recesses into the concrete by a few inches. So that's going to be on there. And I think, Mr. Goley, I think, didn't you calculate it, taking that part out of it? Because that sounds about the same amount of the price. So you've taken that off of the 22. Okay.
I knew it would take part of it. I just wasn't sure exactly how much of it. Okay. Okay. The other thing, I had someone approach me at church Sunday, not complaining about the playground surfacing, but the equipment itself, that they were afraid to let their kids play on it because it was rusting through and they were afraid it was going to break and fall. I'm not real sure why the report that I saw from the independent firm that did an audit on it, safety audit, there were several pieces that was very deficient that need to be replaced or repaired or at least taken out of service. I don't know how we need to address that, but it seems to be a moot point to make a surface safe when the equipment's not safe. I know it's kind of a two-headed snake, I guess, but I think we also need to address that as well, do we not?
Well, we're already doing that. We already reached out and contacted the company that manufactured those pieces, and we're going to come down and give us an estimate on repairing those most critical parts in there. Some of those findings were not critical and need to be right now, but some of them were. So we're having them come down to look at it and give us an estimate on making those repairs.
This is Miracle? I thought they went out of business.
They came here just a few months ago, so.
Okay, well, we were told at one time that they had gone out of business and we couldn't get any parts for it anymore. So I'm glad to know that.
Well, we reached out to them, and if they can't do that, recreational concept said they may be able to come in and help us. And that's the one that was helped us with the application, but they suggested reach out to Miracle right now and see what they can do.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I appreciate that information. I'd not been told that. Okay. I think we probably, as much questions as we got on this needs to go to Parks and Rec before it goes to Budget and Finance. Since you have a meeting scheduled, you can add it to it, can you not? feel like that's the proper place for this to go first. And maybe we can get all these questions and have the figures and final dollar amounts for the different options. What y'all's thinking?
I don't think it needs to go to budget and finance until you do have some answers. It probably would be best suited in Park and Rec.
Well, I don't see budget and finance, not going to know how much you're talking about. I think Parks and Rec needs to look at it, make a recommendation of what way they want us to go with it. And then we'll look at trying to come up with the money. It's a kind of, I think it needs to, that be dissolved before we decide on the money issue. Mr. Ford.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Ford and a second by Mr. Gully to send this on over to Parks and Rec Committee. Hopefully for them to decide what direction we want to take on this surfacing in the park. Any further discussion on it? Gully?
I might make note here. I think I did say 20-year on that, and it is a 20-year warranty on that piece. There's been some other members of the community come to us and talk. I'm glad we stirred up a good conversation here, folks. And you know, everybody wants to talk about the park in Gallatin, the new park in Gallatin with that new surface there. I did reach out and find out that surface actually only has a 5-year warranty. So that it's a really, really nice piece of park there in that park, but we need to realize that what we're trying to look for here is the best that we can do for our future and for our county here at the longest amount of term we can for the money we've got.
Further discussion. Have a motion and a second. Send this to Parks and Rec. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We'll send over Parks and Rec. Y'all get through with it. Give us a recommendation, Bubba, if you can, to budget and finance, please. All right. Elections. I assume that's with the redistricting. Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. I've got a form that'll be going out to everyone on committee assignments. If you want to change, you can put down, rank them the way you want them. That'll be in your packet for this month. And if anybody wants to make a change. And we'll also have election for chairman and pro tem in our September meeting. Okay. We're still waiting on the redistricting. Speaking of elections, we're still waiting on that information to come in. Last date we had was the 16th, 14th.
I believe the local data is supposed to come out September 16th.
Yeah. So we're ready to go on that just as soon as we get the numbers. Okay. We've got several resolutions. The ECD grant app for TCEA number 2. Mayor, can you bring us up to speed on that one?
Yes, if you remember, I think it might have been earlier this year. I don't remember the exact month, but Tennessee Central Economic Authority wanted to apply for an ECD site development grant, but they had to do it through the county. They did not get that grant. However, their new round is opened up and they're wanting to apply for it again. There is a 30% match on this, but Tennessee Central is going to cover the entire match. They just need us to do the resolution for that grant. So that's what this request is. It's just a support grant application. It's a resolution to support the grant application for TCEA. Won't cost the county any funds. All funds will be, any matches will be paid directly by Tennessee Central.
I think that one could go on to the full body. I don't see that there's any committees that it needs to go to.
Before this hits the full body, this is the same grant where they were wanting to input the industrial park area where they were trying to put in some sewer lines and that stuff. Yeah,
it's sewer line extension down to the south campus. So it's one back by the river.
We'll just go ahead and send that to the full body. There's no objection. One-way direction traffic flow for Hall and Gregory Streets. This is coming to us from the Highway Commission. It's a request. There was petitioners in the area up there that want to make this a one-way street. The Highway Commission did vote to recommend it. go to a one-way street. And we do have a resolution prepared with maps and show you where and exactly how the traffic flow will be. This is going down towards school. You'll just make a loop and come back through. It's basically what this is. I don't see that this needs to do anything except go to the full body. Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be in your packet. We made some changes to it. I felt like the first one we drafted out was a little unclear and tried to make it a little bit more clear exactly where it's at. Signage, I think, will be, Bill's already said they would get the signage ordered as soon as we pass it. And I think this is a good thing. We've probably got several of these little streets that we could improve our traffic flow if we would go ahead and do this sort of thing, but this one is very much needed up there.
I just wondered how many people up there wanted it and why, or, well, I saw that, but.
You've got the petition there. 10 people, I believe, on it, all that live on that street. They feel like a lot of times with the parking on each side of the street, people start coming down it, have to stop and back up, or just causing traffic hazards. So they felt like if it was just a one-way loop, it would help with the traffic flow substantially. That was the reasoning behind it.
Bobby Joe Lewis.
I'm sure there will if there's any. I haven't heard anyone. I feel like the people up there all seem to be pretty much in favor of this. And I think this is something they've talked about for several years. It's not just come up on the spur of the moment.
You need a motion on that to go to the full body?
We can.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Ferguson makes a motion and Mr. Noller gives a second, send it to the full body. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next item, we have whistleblower policy edition. Mayor, I'll let you explain this one, please.
Yeah. As we are receiving American Rescue Plan funds, the requirement of that, since it's coming from the federal government, is all recipients have a whistleblower policy. Myself and Amy thought we had one. We looked through our policies and we can't find one. So we have to adopt this to receive and spend those funds. So this is a requirement from federal government. We basically, the resolution that's in here just basically adopts Tennessee state law into our personnel policy.
I have one question on it. Under item 3, said whistleblower can report the event and reveal their identity or report it anonymously. Have a bit of a problem with anonymously because in item 8, you say that they would, that the whistleblower shall receive a report within 5 business days. If they're anonymous, how are you going to get a report to them? And I thought in this country, we're still supposed to have our accuser face us. I don't know. I'm not an attorney. It's just, I thought one of the basic tenets of our law was that you're supposed to have the right to know who's accusing you of something.
The whistleblower can report it anonymously. And again, like I said, this is adopting state law. If you got a question on that, I can report it to Mr. Beller. He did review this and signed off on it. There are some things that can be reported anonymously, even in criminal cases. I don't particularly care for it, but it does happen from time to time. Crime Stoppers, you don't have to report anything, yet that can lead to conviction and somebody spend years of their life in prison. But if you got a question on it, like I said, Mr. Beller will be here at the work session, or he can answer any questions anybody's got before then.
Well, I just hate to see this being misused because somebody's mad at somebody. They just turn something in against them and you don't even know who's saying what or why. I know we live in a very litigious society, to use the big words, but I'm sure it's legal or it wouldn't be before us, but it just, that gives me pause, I guess, to make sure that, but I don't see how are we going to accomplish number 8 if it's anonymous? I guess the answer to that is obviously we can't.
I think it'd be number 9.
I'm 9, I'm sorry, 9, you're right.
Well, I guess if they report it anonymous, then they won't give you any contact information, which has happened several times in the mayor's office. We've received complaints and they won't give you any information. Can't get back to them. We look into it, see if there's any grounds to it, if we think it has any merit. But other than that, if they won't leave us any contact information, we can't get back to them.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Mr. Golly, you're recognized.
Just one more piece here in this case. Remind me one more time where this came from and the purpose it was put into place.
The American Rescue Funds that Congress passed, that we're getting $2.191 million to the general services and $3.3 million to the urban services. Since it is a federal program, it has a requirement that any jurisdiction receiving those funds has a whistleblower policy. We don't currently have one. We thought we did. We went back, looked at all our policies. We don't. So we have to adopt that to comply with the American Rescue Plan.
Mr. Harsh.
Move to send this to the full body.
Okay. Have a motion by Mr. Harsh and a second by Mr. Ford to send this to the full body. Through further discussion, Mr. Gully, you're recognized.
For just my thoughts here, would it not need to go to personnel?
That was my thoughts. Any other discussion?
If that's where you want to send it, we'd accept it to review it.
I can rescind my motion.
I mean, well, I think you're adding it to your personnel policy. I think it should go before the personnel. All right, you back your second? Yeah. Okay. All right. Motion has been rescinded. It's will of the body. Mr. Nolan. Have a motion to send it to personnel by Mr. Nolan, second by Mr. Taylor. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Okay. I think this is one of those things that we're going to have to do, but we need to look at it and make sure that we do our due diligence on it. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. It will go to personnel. And Comcast franchise agreement. What we did last month, I don't want you to get confused with what we did last month. Last month was where they co-op with us on a tower. This is actually the one to do the franchise agreement for service for the county. It's two separate issues. Did I explain that correct, Mayor?
Yes, sir. Under state law, to do basically business or city services in the county, they have to have a franchise. There was a change in state law. They can revert and basically give us revenue under state law, but it will not be as favorable as if we execute this franchise agreement. So like you said, what we did last month was a lease for a piece of property where they have a tower and other equipment. And this is actually for the franchise agreement for them to offer services here.
This also will mean revenues to us. I forget, I think it's, I did know the amount. I want to think it was, I don't want to misspeak, several $100s. They pay it annually.
Yes, I believe it comes in around May or so.
I want to think it's $800, or is it more than that?
I think it's like $7,000 or $8,000. It's based on
maybe
amount
it's
of
$800
sales.
a month. Maybe it was $800 a month. It's so we can get their money.
Need a motion to move that to the full body.
I don't see any need for this to go to budget and finance. I think it can go to the full body. It's just acknowledgement basically of this.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Ferguson makes a motion to send it to the full body. Mr. Harsh gets a second. Any further discussion on it? Any questions on it? Okay. All in favor of the motion to send it to the full body, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll send that one on over. All right, it's several budget amendments. The first one is the 101, the LPRF grant, the $98,000 matching grant. This would be $196,000 total. This is the TDEC Parks grant that we've had so much discussion about. Any questions on it? Mr. Go.
Just a quick statement there before we move on in this piece. I do want to make sure everyone acknowledges and understands that that is a 50-50 match. I don't know that that's necessarily been written as well in what our public takes from these conversations. In other words, we're not getting $196,000.
No, we're getting $98,000.
We're getting $98,000, and the county's matching that. That's correct. Just make sure we're clear on those parts going forward. But I would make a motion to send that on to Budget and Finance.
Do have a motion to send this to Budget and Finance by Mr. Gulling, second by Mr. Clarity. Any other questions? Mr. Ford, you recognize.
Will that come out of 101 or do we have anything left? Will that come out of 101 or do we have anything left on that other money from the state we can use?
It's coming out of the governor's local support grant for general services district.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Ready for the question? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We'll send that one over to Budget and Finance. Next one is, this one will be a fund balance draw in your 101. This is to upgrade the phone system. Our small business plan right now, we've reached the maximum on the licenses and the number of units that the equipment can carry. We went over this at length at the Communications Committee. They did vote to recommend that we do this and send it over to the full body. This will give us an additional 50 licenses and that should carry us forward several years. We're anticipating more phones in here as we move people back in here. There will be some additional phones, and we've had requests in certain places like the archives building, the new water department building will need some phones. So trying to get out in front of this basically is what we're trying to do on it. Okay. Any further questions on it? Mayor, did you have anything you need to add on it?
No, that's right. Our current plan, I think we have 2 open lines. We did find another one that was a fax that's been discontinued. So we do have 2 open lines, but we don't have any phones here at the courthouse, at the animal shelter, at the convenience center. There's a couple other places I'm forgetting. Archives doesn't have one and they've requested one. So that's what it is. We can't add any of those phone lines till we go with this new plan. And this $14,000 basically is, it's the one-time expenditure to get all the equipment and everything installed. So the recurring after that is supporting and licenses.
Any questions?
What was that recurring cost?
I believe it was $1,593, I think, a quarter. So it's a little over $6,000 annually. And again, that is for continuing support and licenses.
So according to this sheet she gave us, the current, I think, is quarterly payment is $590. It'd be an additional $972, and it'd bring it up to $1,563.39 a quarter. So it's going to amount to about a $6,000 annual expense. Yes, sir, Mr. Harsh. Have a motion to send it over to Budget and Finance. Nobody wants to second it. Mr. Gregory is going to get a second. Okay, have a motion by Mr. Harsh and a second by Mr. Gregory to send it to Budget and Finance. Any further questions on it? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Does carry. Next is 3 budget amendments coming forward from the school system. Do not have them. I can got some detail on it if you look to your next to the back page there. The first one's a request, and it's necessary to provide summer learning camp services in July. I believe these are all coming out of their budget. And that one is in the amount of $14,857. The second one is salary schedule adjustments. This is a request necessary to account for the baseline salary increase due to increased minimum salary schedule and increase to the bus driver salaries. If you remember, they didn't think this was going to be a part of the budget. The last minute, the state legislature added it in. That's why we're having to deal with this now instead of during budget time last year. We had talked about this at length, and I think in the education committee, and sent it over to the full body. The other one is U-Trust donation. My understanding was that there was some money that was in last year's budget that they want to reallocate to this year's budget.
Yes, sir. I believe there was some that rolled over into fund balance. Didn't get spent last year, rolled over into fund balance, and they're wanting to allocate it now.
Okay. It went into their fund balance, but they need to do a line item on it. Basically, it's still their money. They're just pulling it. What was there went into fund balance. Now they want to take it back out. Mr. Gully?
Motion to send all 3 of these to Budget and Finance.
Have a second? Mr. Gregory has a second. Any further discussions or questions? Try to have a little bit better explanation in Budget and Finance for you. I hope that was satisfactory tonight. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that is done. Mayor, did you have anything else?
No, I'll just let the committee know we did draw down our American Rescue Fund first tranche for this year. It's, I think, $1,093,000, and that is currently in the bank. Still haven't received the final rule from Treasury. That's supposed to be sometime in the middle of this month. That's the last we heard. We did get a little bit more direction on some of the items last week and some of the programs the state's looking at. They're looking at use some of their money to help do a match or spur some other infrastructure investments with broadband and water and sewer. Don't know exactly what that is right now. There was some question whether or not that's going to be extension of new service or replacement of existing lines. Didn't really get clarification on that. So that's something that's still in the work, but there had been, I don't know if you all received some of the emails from Tennessee County Services Association, but some members of Congress were saying it didn't look like a lot of local governments were drawing their money down. So obviously they don't need it. So the kind of suggestion went out to go ahead and draw those funds down. So we did do that. And we are currently working with a lot of different groups looking at what the options are going forward. But again, we're still waiting that final rule from Treasury to see exactly what we're going to be able to spend it on.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Ford and myself went to the Regional County Commissioners Association meeting last week, Thursday night, I believe it was. And that's one thing that we talked about there, or that they talked about, was that you need to go ahead and draw down funds, but you need to be real careful on spending them to make sure that they're going to be approved. I think the state, they said that the state would be getting a big chunk of money that they wanted to try to pass on to local governments because they felt like we had a better pulse on what was needed in each of our counties rather than even the legislators up there did. So I'm sure you got the same information in the mayor's meeting that we got in the commissioner's meeting. Also, I want to let y'all know that there's at least 3 more. There's actually 7 more, but there's 3 in the area. There was a meeting tonight in Henry Horton. I believe there's one this Thursday night, also over at Springfield, if I'm remembering correctly. And then there'll be one later. Let's see. I think Henry Horton was tonight. There's one in Cleveland. There's one in Paris. They're a little further away, but the three close ones were Cookville, Henry Horton, and Springfield. And but there's some others, you know, that you could do if you need to. I think we came away from it thinking that we've been to better meetings. There was the information was that we're trying to get you the information. I'm sure we've all been to meetings like that, but that seemed to be the simplest way to put it. But they did feed us well, so I guess it was worth the drive up there to eat. Okay. Any of the commissioners have any other discussion, Mr. Ford?
Just one other comment I want to make about it. That's the only thing that I really got out of it is they really, really want us to be careful how we spend this money, because that can come back to haunt us. So that was the real big jest of it. And several of the guys were there, so they were very adamant about it.
Mr. Miller.
Is Parks and Recreation going to change their meeting so that they'll have it before the budget finance?
No.
You're not?
No rush on it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just follow up on Mr. Ford said, kind of the thought right now is if you go through the interim rule, it kind of gives some areas specific examples of what you can use it for. Kind of the suggestion that's been made right now is for this first tranche, use it on those things you know have been specifically stated can be used for, and then maybe get a little bit more adventurous with your future money. There was discussion, and I think it's going to happen. Exactly who it's going to be couched under, I don't know, of create a database of all the local governments of what they're using it on. So that's every county and city across the state. It was thought that there's safety in numbers. So if you get 60 local governments that are doing one certain thing with it, well, then it's harder for Treasury to come back and say you can't use it for that. So that's kind of what's been floated out there right now, and that's kind of what we're looking at. I've already talked to some of our internet service providers as far as expanding broadband. You know, we've been very fortunate getting grants in the past. We already have pretty wide coverage throughout the county, but there was a couple other things that I think ECD mentioned last week that I didn't know could be used for. They mentioned they could do a match through their funds to do some other programs. So that's something we're going to look at. And as we go forward, just get more clarification on that, try to see exactly what we can use and on what we can't.
Thank you, Mayor. Anything else? Public comments, Mr. Public, do you have any comments? Mr. Public does not have any comments. Mr. Gregory makes a motion to adjourn. Mr. Ford gets a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen of the jury.